Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we are doing part 4 of my story. And also don't forget to subscribe down below. Your turn.
Okay. We're talking about her 4th surgery today, but before we get into the details on that, we need to talk about teeth. So that's one thing we haven't really talked much about is how her teeth came in during this whole process. We knew obviously because of the cleft there would be some missing teeth. How many? We didn't know. So let me kind of give you a kind of a summary and overview of kind of how her upper jaw went. Her bottom jaw is totally fine. When she was just a few days old, in her gum line on the very front of her mouth, the very like where her front teeth would be, she had just the outside shell of a tooth that popped through. We were like, why are we having teeth and we're 9 days, not even, week old or whatever it was. So when we went down and met her team when she was 9 days old, they were like, oh, don't worry about it. It's common. It's just the outer shell of a tooth. It'll go away on its own. And it did. It ended up falling out on its own. I don't know. She probably ate it. I never found it.
I don't know.
It was there 1 minute and gone the next. So we don't know where that went. But as she had teeth came in, when her 2 front teeth came in, they kind of
collided.
They collided and they chipped. And it was a pretty good chip to where when she was 3, she had to go in and have a cap put over them because of the decay that was starting in them. So she had to go to a pediatric dentist and have that taken care of. And then after that, they just kept coming in like normal, except for the few that were missing. And as we found at one point, we found a tooth in her palate and we nicknamed it
Lucy.
And Lucy was there for a long time. So she had to make sure that she took care of Lucy because we didn't know if Lucy was still a baby tooth or a permanent tooth. They weren't sure, but as she got older and x-rays were done, they determined that it was a baby tooth. We just kind of let Lucy stay there as long as Lucy could. So going into her 4th surgery, though, we only knew about Lucy in her upper palate. 4th surgery, what was your 4th surgery?
It was a bone graft.
Okay, so it was her bone graft. So what's a bone graft? What's a bone graft for?
A bone graft is to add bone to the gum ridge.
Okay. So it's a little more intense of a surgery, but prior to the bone graft, though, we had to have some work done. She had to have some braces put on because they wanted to straighten everything that she had as they were. No, that's their second set.
Second set.
But they also had to put in an expander. Do you remember your expander?
Weren't those little blue thingies?
No, those were the spacers that they put in the back to put the metal on your back teeth.
No.
Now, the expander they do for a cleft isn't like your regular expander that more orthodontic patients have, but it was just kind of like a wire. You didn't like turn it or anything, and there wasn't a lot of adjustments, but they said on average with the expanders with cleft babies, cleft kids, when they put this, it's about 12 months. Well, hers took about 18 months before she was actually expanded to the point where they were ready to go in and do the bone graft.
Of course, Mom. Of course.
And once again, a typical thing of Aubrey. Instead of 12 months, it took 18 months. So she had the braces and the expander in. For her, from the time that she was going to have her last orthodontist appointment to the time when there was surgery, there was too much space between those visits that they were hesitant to take the expander out because it probably would have collapsed since there's no bone to hold anything there. So for her, they ended up taking her expander out while she was in surgery. So the fun thing about this surgery is she was old enough to know what was going on. And so she can actually share a lot more of what was going on in her brain during this time. I'm going to let you take over about your experience with surgery stuff. Talk about the pre-op stuff and everything.
So before I went into surgery, I got this little mask thingy, and they put what's it called?
The stuff to help you go to sleep.
Yes, that's
it's the scent to help.
Yeah. So I think I got root beer or watermelon, one of the two.
It was root beer. It smelled really good.
Okay, yeah.
But before that, what did they give?
Oh, they gave me some medicine. I don't know what it was called, but it made me cry.
A super bad cry, like emotionally distressed cry.
So they never gave that to me again.
Well, they said not to give her that again.
No, never.
So she basically, they got her mask ready with the root beer scent, so it would be easier.
So like this part would go onto my face like that. Yeah, it's kind of flattened. Mm-hmm.
So she got her scent, and when they gave her that medicine, she was totally fine beforehand, and then she just could not talk anymore. And so we're trying to comfort her and calm her down, and oh no, it wasn't happening. It was pretty scary. I mean, not scary in the sense that it was anything bad. It was just sad to see that there's nothing we could do.
Yeah, and then I eventually fell asleep.
Well, yeah, because they wheeled you away. Do you remember us leaving you at the door?
Nope.
Okay. So typical early morning surgery. This surgery was scheduled to be 5 hours. Okay. So we knew it was going to be a lot longer of a day, being 5 hours. So we, her dad and I had packed lots of, things to do in the waiting area. I think we had to be there at 6, like all of them. And then as we wheeled her off, said our goodbyes, she was still an emotional train wreck, literally a train wreck. And it was okay. At this point, we had a different surgeon. And so, he was pretty confident that everything was going to be fine. And he was totally right. She goes off to surgery and we go to the waiting area.
Did you guys ever fall asleep?
No. It's too stressful because they call us every half hour to tell us how you're doing.
Oh.
So we always had a half-hour update of the first one, of course, is always like, oh, she did well with the anesthesia, nothing to worry about. She's stable. And then they would say, okay, they call later and say, the doctor's finishing up with, I guess you need to talk about that, with her hip.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's where they harvest the bone from, is from her hip.
Yeah,
so
I have a scar like this big on my hip.
Yeah, so, so with that bone graft, they go in and they take it out of a hip bone. And so they started with that first, and then they went up to work on the gum line, I should say. We would get notification, or the nurse would call saying, things are well, things are good. And it's close to that 5-hour mark. And we got a phone call from the nurse, and she goes, oh, just so you know, doctor is just going to go ahead and work on her nose again. Okay. Oh, and he also went in, and if you remember from her palate surgery, her palate had opened, and then it's grew back together except for a tiny slit. He went in and sewed that up as well. But then he decided to fix her nose. Okay, well, her 5-hour surgery turned out to be an 8-hour surgery. And we were like, oh, okay. When the surgeon came out, he came out to the waiting room. We were the last family waiting there from the surgery side. I mean, it took forever. Those last 3 hours were even longer than the first 5, it felt like. But he came out and he was like, everything went great. I'm just going to tell you right now, she's not going to look the same. We were like, oh dear, what did you do to her? And so he went on to tell us that he kept looking at her, and he was looking at her pictures and everything prior to surgery. And he didn't tell us this in the pre-op area when he saw her, but he just felt he could not have her under and not do a nose revision because of her growing, and it broke after her second surgery. It came undone or whatever. And it had popped, and as she grew, it just kind of kept flattening and flattening and flattening. So this side of her nose was flatter. And he was like, I had to fix it. I just couldn't leave it alone. I just felt I needed to do it. So we really didn't know what she was going to look like when we walked back there.
And then it fell again.
It did, but that's okay. It's not like it was before. It's fallen a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's just because you keep growing on it. You need to stop growing.
I will sometime.
So we're able to go back to the recovery area, and
My vision was blind. I could not see. Everything was blurry. I thought the nurse next to me was my mom, and I started talking to the nurse, and she's like, "What?" And then I saw these like two people coming down the hallway. I was like, "Oh, here's my parents. I thought this was mom." It wasn't mom.
yeah, she was a little gorked out.
Yeah.
But she, when we saw her, the first thing I said was, "Oh my gosh, we haven't seen that since she was 9 months old." You could tell he took his time, the surgeon took his time to go in, and he had rounded her nose, everything again. And it was the first time we'd seen that since she was nine months old. Of course, we get her stable and we can take her up to the floor. She didn't complain about her mouth.
No. You know what I complained about? My heels. We gotta wear these things. Don't know what they're called. But I gotta wear these.
So she, with laying on the table for 8 hours, her heels,
My heels.
got really sore from being in the same position for as long as they were. And so when you would ask her, "How you feeling?" "My heels just hurt."
Yeah.
Heck. And the doctors looked at him. There's nothing wrong with them. It was like a pressure point that they were just sore. So she was more concerned about her heels than she was what happened in
Like
her.
nothing else hurt, just my heels.
Like the bone, the harvesting from her hip didn't hurt. The mouth didn't hurt. Nothing.
And
nothing
like
hurt.
whenever I had to like use the bathroom, I had to have two people on the side of me holding me up, and I was walking on my tippy toes because it hurt so bad.
Yeah, it was bizarre. She totally didn't complain about her hip or her face, which was surprising. The surgeon, I guess, was thinking of actually keeping her 2 nights because she was complaining so much about it, but ultimately it ended up being 1 night. We were able to take her home.
Yeah, and then
so
I walked out to grandma for a couple days.
Did walk like a grandma. But the thing about her, and it's like most of these kids,
I didn't want to sit down. I wanted to be up and walking.
We had put a recliner in her room for her to sleep in, so she was, not laying flat. She did not want to sit still. She kept getting up and hobbling around the house and doing this and doing that, and you couldn't slow her down. And that's the thing, she just wasn't slowing down. So like before, these kids, they don't stop. They just keep moving. There's nothing that holds them back. So that's one thing to remember is, they are amazing. Nothing holds them back. Leading up to her new surgery this year, she's probably going to show us again that no matter how much we think it's going to be painful and hurt.
Oh, it's going to be painful.
At least she acknowledges that. But she'll probably bounce back faster than I would from something like that.
And
because
of course,
I'm just
we're going to
old,
make a
right?
video about that.
Well, yes, we still have
When
some
that
other things
happens.
to happen. So it took 10 years to go from the time she was born to her bone graft.
And now.
And so now we're going into not her final surgery. There'll probably be one more after this.
I thought they said 1 or 2.
It depends. You'll have to come back next time to hear the details about what's really going on and things that are happening leading up to that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like she said before,
subscribe down below and hit that notification bell.
all right. So if you have any questions,
Email us at snowburnstories@gmail.com.
we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
See ya.